Hello Sarah, it's Thursday, October 10th, and today I'm going to talk about TFIOS. Part 1, Metaphors. In TFIOS, Augustus Waters is kind of obsessed with metaphors, and so he tries to find metaphors in just about everything. Augustus puts a cigarette in his mouth, something that can give him cancer, but won't because he doesn't give it the chance to kill him because he doesn't ever light them. And I'm going to talk about a big one now. Part 2, Water and Time. Water and time are huge metaphors, and they're even mentioned in the very beginning of the book. On one of the first pages of the book, this appears, which is an excerpt from the imaginary book An Imperial Affliction. It reads like this. As the tide washed in, the Dutch tulip man faced the ocean. Conjoiner, rejoiner, poisoner, concealer, revelator. Look at it. Rising up and rising down, taking everything with it. What's that, I asked. Water, the Dutchman said. Well, and time. That's before the book even starts, and the book continues to talk about water and time throughout the whole thing. The whole time we read this book, they're obsessed with time. They're talking about how they don't have much time left, how they have to make the most of the time that they have. Augustus talks about in the video games how he has to save these people because even if he gives them only another moment, that time is worth it. One thing about TFIOS is that it's kind of like a slice of life, but because the characters are ill, this slice of life is kind of like their whole lives. It starts at the end, and it ends. We get the eulogies of both of the main characters. Can you get more of an ending than that? But the really interesting about Water and Time to me is the water. Amsterdam is full of canals. How can you get more water than that? Also in the eulogy, Gus talks about how he goes and visits Hazel when she's in the hospital, and he asks the nurse how she's doing, and he says she's taking on water. The water is also in Hazel when her lungs are failing. But besides that, Augustus Waters, it's in his name. Gus is a conjoiner. He helps bring people together. All these people that came into her life and that she gets to know are through Gus. Rejoiner, he is a response for Hazel. Hazel, who's been so alone for so long, has someone to talk to, has someone who responds. Poisoner, this one's interesting to me because poison sounds like it would be a bad thing, like Gus poisons Hazel, but I don't think poison is meant that way in this case. Hazel talks about how she poisons herself to make her parents happy with the fact that her cancer treatments are poison. I think Gus is like that. He is a treatment for Hazel, but ultimately he leaves scars. Gus is a concealer in two ways. One, he conceals the fact that his cancer comes back, which is kind of a big thing. Two, he also gives Hazel a place to hide, in the same place that he is hiding. When they're together, they don't have to pretend that everything's okay. And finally, Revelator. Gus reveals a lot about Hazel Grace. Hazel Grace learns about herself through the process of meeting and losing Gus. Augustus reveals to Hazel what it's like to lose someone you love. And through that experience, she understands how her parents feel. That her parents wouldn't have it any other way, just like she wouldn't have it any other way of loving Gus. Therefore, Gus, water, important. Part 3, An Imperial Affliction. Hazel finds this book very poignant to what her life is like. Hazel sees herself in this character. She understands that, yeah, her life is gonna end. What does she want to know from Peter Van Houten? She wants to know what happens to Anna's mom, to the people in her life. Hazel wants to know the future. She sees herself as Anna and she wants to know what's going to happen to her mom. Her search for Peter Van Houten and the ending of that book is a search to the end of her own story. But what's really interesting is that Hazel doesn't die at the end of the story. Gus does. But we do get to know what happens to the people around him. We get the ending that Imperial Affliction is lacking. Part 4, Wishes. It's kind of often quoted in the book that the world is not a wish-granting factory. Wishes are being granted left and right, just not the one that will cure them. I mean, they go to Amsterdam, the whole climax of the book, because of a wish that was granted. He wanted more time so they could fall in love, but he got his wish because they did fall in love. 5, the title. The Fault in Our Stars. Basically, the whole book talks about how that's not true. Peter Van Houten flat out says Shakespeare's wrong. The fault is in our stars. We can't control fate. They didn't choose cancer. They didn't choose this illness that they have. They wouldn't have met if they hadn't been at the support group. So the fault in their stars allows them to meet, grow closer together as people, and go to Amsterdam. And Amsterdam is where most of the changes take place. But the most interesting thing to me is that the fault isn't in their stars all the time. Hazel Grace even says that the cancer, which was part of Gus, stopped his heart, which was also part of Gus. The literal thing that separates them is in their bodies. It's their cancer. It's their dysfunctional cells. So is it really fate that tears them apart, or is it their cancer? Technically, it's both. The fault is in their stars and in themselves. Like Gus, my thoughts are stars I can't fathom in a constellation, so I really hope that this made sense even when I cut it down. And keep being authentically awesome.